adding is going to be this part. All this stuff was from yesterday. I'm just kind of, like I said, I'm going to go through real quick, make sure you're up to date, because we're going to do everything pretty much the same today. And then there's going to be about maybe 4 examples I'll go through that use the one new thing. All right, even though it relates directly to what you did yesterday. All right, so again, hopefully at the top of the sheet, you got all those 4. All right, main things highlighted. Make sure you're keeping that in a place where you can always reference it. All right, that's why I have you put it on that sheet. And hopefully, off to the side, you got that one that we haven't even used yet. It hasn't even come up yet. All right, then at the bottom, where you got the common properties, you should have how many of them? 5-ish, right? It's like 6, kind of. But you should have, what was your guess first? Reflexive? Vertical? Alright, so the vertical, oh, you guys went, I did vertical angles, then you should have the parallel lines thing. We had reflexive. This was the midpoint, maybe bisectors, right? All wrapped into one. I split it up into like A and B kind of thing, with the angles. That was the segments and then the angles. And then the last thing was the perpendicular lines. Guys, look, the homework problems, they're going through them. Every single one of the statements that I wrote out when I was going through the homework problems would have come directly from that. Everything was. Okay, so there was nothing on the homework that you could not get if you wrote down these things correctly with really good diagrams next to them, so you can check the diagrams like you should be doing. So hopefully you got that. If yours is not up to par, find someone that does and copy it down. If you don't have any diagrams next to these, you're kind of missing the point of writing this stuff out. Okay? So if you don't have any, find someone that took nice, neat ones and copy it down. Okay? Because everything's going to come from there still. Again, and then just to remind you of the 4 steps that we're going through, this is still going to be the same way. The difference today is when we get to the 3rd step, like you'll still get to that point. All right, because you're still going to be having triangles being congruent to each other. It's just what's going to happen is we're not going to end the proof right there. It's going to add maybe 1 or 2 more steps to it, depending on what's being asked. So this is going to be the new thing, guys. Okay? It's 1 extra step. Essentially what this is taking 2 things that you know are congruent, all right, and proving that they're congruent, and then saying, look, I know these 2 shapes, and for us it's just going to be triangles. I know these 2 triangles are congruent, so that means that every single part that corresponds to each other has to be the same. That's it. The reason this comes up, okay, and the reason they have this here is because what you did the past couple days, right, with just saying 2 triangles are congruent, you didn't necessarily pair up all 3 sides and all 3 angles at the same time. You had the theorems that we had, right, the postulates and theorems only dealt with three pairs of things. 2 angles and a side, 2 sides and an angle, or all 3 sides, okay, being congruent. So what's going to happen today is it's going to say, look, once you go through those postulates and you say these 3 pairs all match up, then use the fact that you know these triangles are congruent to say that the other parts are. This part right here, this is kind of the new reason. It says, I can't read it, guys, it says corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. That generally, in most books, and when I do it, is going to be abbreviated with just using the first letters of all those words. With the exception of like of and are, those usually don't get included. So for you guys, when you get to this part of the proof, I'll point out how you know it in a second. All you need to definitely put is that it's just those words abbreviated. Like that C right there stands for that one. That P is the T there. This word congruent is that C. Triangles is the T, and that last congruent is that C. It's just the abbreviation. If you want to write it all out, I don't care. Go ahead and write it all out. That's up to you. I'm not going to do that because that's extra writing, and I don't like doing that. Okay, so if you like writing, I don't care. You can write it out. Write out all this stuff if you want. You can write out angle, side with words if you want there. It's like AAS. I don't know. I'm still pointing out the same thing. Okay, now, the thing, when you're doing these proofs, the thing that's going to key you off as to when this reason right here, right, because that's a reason in terms of like statements and reasons, the thing that's going to key you off of when to use that is if you see your proof statement being something other than two triangles are congruent to each other. Right? So in the way, like beyond this chapter, like it's real obvious in this one, but beyond this chapter, if your picture has two triangles in it, like there's one triangle there, there's two there, and this proof statement says something other than these two triangles need to be shown to be congruent, you're still going to go through the act of showing those two triangles are congruent. It's just you're going to add one more step, and that's going to be the reason. So again, if your proof statement says something other than shows these two triangles being congruent to each other, that reason is going to pop up somewhere. Right? Unless you know like an alternate theorem to it, but we don't have anything probably that would come up in this chapter that you could skirt around this. You're going to have to do at least the step showing the triangles being congruent. Okay? Alright, so I'm going to go through a couple of proofs. I'm probably not going to do this one first. Let me do, I'm going to start with this. Like guys, honestly, if you want to go ahead and do them by yourself, it's probably better. Like I'm going to do them, but at least you've got the idea of I need to show the triangles being congruent to each other. So it would honestly be better for you to attempt to do it on your own and just see if it makes sure it matches up with what I'm doing. And like I said, I know I'm going to be using the thing I just put up there because the diagram here has two triangles in it. That proof statement says something other than these two triangles have to be congruent. So it's saying segments have to be congruent. So I know when I get to this step here, I'm going to be ending with that new thing, the CPCTC. Yeah. Because the picture gives you so much information, it has to be a specific picture in each case. I'll tell you ahead of time, guys, this one, by the time we're done with it, with grouping the givens together, is going to be just 5 steps. It's actually taken one that was on the homework, I think. When there was one on the homework, it was just like this. It's just adding one more step to it. All right, so going through the whole process, right, like I had yesterday, where you go, the 4 steps is, first thing, mark off the givens, right? So all the givens are already marked off like the book normally does, but I'm going to redraw them anyway. Put my little number 1 next to it just to remind myself that's my first step. So all the givens are already done with. Then you would move on to the common properties, right? Look at your sheet, look at things that are given, see what matches up. In this case, they give you parallel lines. So if you got parallel lines, what kind of angles do you need to mark congruent? If you don't remember, read, guys. You got a piece of paper in front of you, get it out, read. Given parallel lines, what comes next? Alternate interior angles. There. Step 2. What else? That mark can go there. What? The reflexive one. Okay. So that's step 3. Do I have enough there to say triangles are congruent? Do I?
Yeah.
Math.
Oh, yeah.
Why? How?
Because it'll be, well, because we have 2 pairs that can go inside and can go inside.
Okay, well, what's the posture that says the 2 triangles are congruent?
Side angle, side angle.
Do some jumping jacks or something?
It's just good, I get it already.
Yeah, I know.
It's going.
I think you always do something. All right, so anyway, here's the step that'll come as 4th, right? Because I said this is going to be 5 steps. The 4th thing is you have to say the 2 triangles are congruent. You just said side on side. All right? So for you to do this stuff, for you to end with this one, okay? You guys should be able to recognize that if this says something, like I said, other than 2 triangles are congruent, you're going to end with this. The step right before this one, in like the majority of the cases, is going to be saying 2 triangles are congruent. All right, so if I wrote this out, first thing would be the givens. I'll actually write them out this time. All right, so that was my first step. Second thing, where I got the little 2 marked off at, here, I'm going to do this. I'm going to say that's angle 1 and 2. All right, so I'm going to say angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. So alternate interior angles are congruent. Third thing, we got the 3, that was my reflexive. Fourth thing was saying the 2 triangles are congruent. When you write that out, make sure that you write it in the correct order such that all the corresponding parts match up. And remember, the first triangle you list out doesn't matter. It's just the thing that matters is the second triangle has to match up. So if I do like triangle MQT, so MQT would be this one. How would I write the second one? Which one? T, N, M, there's yeah. So we'll go T, and M. That was side angle side. And then the last step would just be writing that last statement out, the prove statement. Okay, so all right, like I said, if you don't want to write the abbreviation, you think you're going to forget it, you can write corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. Like you can write all that out. All right? What?
You lost me at step 5.
Why?
Where did that come from?
The whole thing was on the prior slide.
Oh yeah, I remember.
I should have written it down. Would have been a good idea.
Is that always going to be the last step of it? Just like that?
Whenever you see something. All right, so write it down, guys. We got 2 more I think I'm going to go through. Okay. All right, so it's going to be the next one. This one again, this one, let's see. This one's probably going to be like 4 steps long. So this is like a shorter one that is going to end with the new thing. All right, so going through the whole process again, right? Marking the givens off and all that stuff like I gave you in the steps. I'm going to redraw the givens that are there, the little one by, just to remind myself that's step one. Second step, what do you guys think the second step would be? Vertical angles. I'll put a 1 and 2 there just for the sake of writing out. So there's step 2. Are the two triangles congruent? Are they? Why? Angle, side angle. Now, the reason I would be asking that is because the proof statement says I want two angles to be congruent. If it says something other than are the two triangles congruent, you're going to be ending with that step. All right? And just remember, those two letters right there mean congruent triangles. So I have to actually prove that the triangles are congruent first, which in this case is step 3. That's going to be my angle, side angle. Then I can end it with that right there. All right? Like I said, majority of the time, if that proof statement says something other than are the two triangles congruent, and your picture has triangles in it, you're going to go through the steps to get to the fact that you know that they're equal to each other by doing one of the sides or side angle sides or something. All right, so this one's only 4 steps. All right, so first thing is given. Second thing you guys told me is the vertical angles, which I labeled 1 and 2. So angle 1 congruent to angle 2. Third thing was the two triangles being congruent. Again, make sure that you have them listed in order. If you mess that step up, guys, I will count off. That has to be listed in the right order. Yeah. You need to put vertical angle theorem? Yeah, it's fine. Okay, so in this case I did ACB. So if I do ACB, what will be the order of the other letters? And then the last step is the proof, which was B and E are congruent. It's a rather short one in terms of these kind of problems. Okay. All right, we'll do at least one more. I don't think I have any more really after that. Okay. That's going to be the next one. This one is going to be, let me see. This one is probably going to be about 6 steps. This one I'm going to work a little bit backwards on also, like from the proof back, just to get a bearing on what I need to get to. Which is fine, guys. If you got proofs you don't know how to end it or where to go with it, try and work backwards, because you can always work backwards, at least to figure out what statements you need. Okay? Alright, so to start with though, I'm going to still do the givens. And after I've marked those off, I'm going to go back to the proof statement just so I know where I need to end with. So the givens here would be N and P are congruent. Alright, and they say O is the midpoint, so that's a midpoint of NP. Okay, so again, just writing that in there is the given part. Remember the actual segments that are congruent? That's not coming strictly from that statement. You have to add the extra one to it. Okay, now, what I mean by working backwards, if I look at the proof statement here, it doesn't say two triangles are congruent. And obviously my picture here has two triangles. So that means at some point in time, that's going to have to come up. Okay, like I'm going to have to tie that together. But my proof statement doesn't directly end on saying two things are congruent. But if I'm saying, look, I want you to show me that O is the midpoint of that segment. If O is the midpoint of this segment here, SR, which two have to be congruent to each other? So what I have to do is I have to get to the point where I'm showing that those two are technically congruent to each other. Okay? So at the end of this, I'm going to have this be my last step, and that's my next to last step. Because if I get to a point here, then I can just say, look, since these two are congruent, that makes that the midpoint kind of thing. All right, and that's what I mean work backwards. Go from here to what you need to say directly before it. And this right here would resemble like the last two. So I know that's where that's going to come up at. Okay, so I kind of already know how I'm going to end it. I'm going to end it with this, and then that statement will be the last thing. So these will be the last two statements. All right, so my first step was putting the givens in there. In the beginning, since it says O is the midpoint of NP, which segments end up being congruent directly on the fact that that's the midpoint of that one? Like if that's in the middle of NP, which ones are congruent? I know an OP, so there's my second step. Are there any angles or sides I know directly are congruent based on what it looks like? Just a picture? Vertical angles. So that's my step 3. Do I have enough information to say the two triangles are congruent now? Yeah, why? Angle, side angle again. And again, I know I need to do this because I need to use this statement right there. And the only way I can use this is if I have congruent triangles, right? That C and T there means congruent triangles. So once I got this, there's my 5th step. That's going to be my 6th one. Okay, so this one's going to be 6 right now. This would be one that a lot of people would have a complete understanding of what needs to be showed. But I could see people writing this in 4 steps, just missing little things, like the whole switching from here to here. Like people would get this marked off and automatically think it's done without adding that extra step, actually stating it's the midpoint. Happens all the time. All right, so first thing is given second thing was the segments that were congruent, so NO. All right, and that was the midpoint telling us. Third thing was the vertical angles you guys said, so 1 and 2 are congruent. Fourth thing was the 2 triangles. How should I write that out? What do you guys want me to write for the 2 triangles? What are they? S-O-N and not if you do S-O-N. R-O-P. So triangle S-O-N. That was angle, side angle. 5th step was actually showing which segments would make this the midpoint of that long thing, which is what I wanted. And we said at the beginning was, yeah, the SO and SO and OR. And then the 6th thing would just be writing out the actual last statement. Okay? The only thing is, we didn't necessarily put a reason to this one, but what you've done on that last statement is I've classified this point as a midpoint. If you ever classify anything as a specific word, it's always definition of whatever that word is. All right, so that'd be the whole thing on that one. That's about probably the longest